A silent star beats a steady drum in the quiet expanse of the night sky. An ethereal rhythm that resonates across the universe, symbolizes a guiding beat to which the essence of life itself dances. Meanwhile, the spirits of generations past continue their vibrant dance beneath the vast sky, unfazed by the passage of time. The air is rich with the whispered voices of ancestors, carried gently by the rustling wind through the branches of ancient trees, murmuring the tales of triumphs, struggles, and wisdom from times long gone. These stories compel us to question, are you ready to open your heart and truly listen to their call? Can you embrace the connection that binds you to the past, reaching out across time and space? For woven into the fabric of our world, from the bustling streets of Brazil, where music and dance are integral, to the vibrant culture in Mexico, celebrating heritage and history, lie the echoes of African ancestors. Their presence looms large in the lush landscapes of Colombia and far-reaching corners beyond. In places where millions of African men, women, and children hold these ancient rhythms and voices within their souls, consciously or unconsciously, honoring their heritage through the continuation of storytelling, music, and traditions that have transcended time. These beats, so deeply ingrained, serve as reminders of an enduring legacy that continues to influence and shape the present and the future. The term null is a concept commonly used in computer science and databases. It represents a lack of value or a non-existent reference. In programming languages, null is often used to signify that a variable doesn't currently hold any valid data. In databases, a field containing a null value indicates that the value is unknown, missing, or inapplicable. For example, in a table of users, if a user has not provided their phone number, the phone number field for that user might be set to null. In programming, developers must handle null values carefully to avoid errors. When a variable is null, trying to access its properties or methods can result in runtime errors, often referred to as null reference or null pointer errors. Therefore, checking for null values and appropriately handling them is a crucial part of robust software development. African people in the Americas, since their forced arrival during the transatlantic slave trade, have played foundational roles in the development of the nations they were brought to. They were the backbone of agricultural economies, cultivating staple crops such as cotton, tobacco, and sugar, which were vital to the wealth and economy of these countries. In times of conflict, they were conscripted, often fighting on the front lines or serving in roles that were crucial to victory, yet frequently without recognition or reward. Despite their indispensable input, African people's contributions, stories, and voices have been consistently marginalized. Their narratives were deliberately silenced, omitted from history books, and systematically excluded from official accounts. The reality of the exploitation, the resilience in the face of oppression, and the immense contributions made by African people were buried under layers of myths designed to promote a simplistic narrative of national unity and racial harmony. This sanitized version of history has served to mask the true extent of their sacrifices and the significant struggles they faced. Despite efforts to silence them, the legacy of African people persists through the preservation of oral histories, cultural traditions, and through the dedicated work of historians and activists who are committed to uncovering and sharing these important stories. The acknowledgement of their true place in history is essential for a holistic understanding of the past and to honor their enduring legacy in the Americas. The Americas have played and continue to play a pivotal role in global history, not merely serving as a side note, but as significant contributors to the shaping of world events. For instance, Brazil's history is marked by the emergence of powerful symbols of resistance, such as Palmares. This was a quilombo, a settlement founded by escaped slaves in the 17th century, which grew into a robust state exemplifying autonomy and defiance against colonial oppression. This community defied Portuguese attempts to dismantle it for nearly a century, serving as a beacon of hope and resistance for enslaved and oppressed people. In Mexico, the influence of historical struggles and movements profoundly affected the socio-political landscape. Revolutionary sentiments and actions have been deeply ingrained in the fabric of society, influencing major events like the Mexican Revolution of the early 20th century. Figures connected to this rich legacy of resistance and advocacy for the marginalized have risen to prominence, with some even becoming presidents. These leaders brought with them the ideals of reform, advocating for policies that reflected the revolutionary spirit that shaped their nation's path. Thus, far from being overlooked or relegated to the margins, the Americas have significantly contributed to the tapestry of world history, with their stories of resistance, reform, and revolution echoing across time. In Colombia, the preservation of ancient African languages and cultural traditions speaks to the resilience of these communities whose ancestors were brought to the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade. This rich cultural tapestry, woven with threads of language, music, dance, religion, and oral storytelling, has been maintained and passed down through generations. These traditions form a critical part of Colombia's multicultural identity, particularly in the regions where African descendants have settled and developed strong community bonds, such as in the Caribbean coastal areas and the Pacific region. However, in the grand narrative of the Americas, these African-descended populations often face erasure or misrepresentation. Their histories and contributions are frequently overlooked or subsumed into broader categories, such as mestizo, which typically refers to people of mixed European and indigenous ancestry, or are erroneously categorized alongside indigenous communities, disregarding their unique cultural backgrounds. This tendency to lump diverse groups into homogeneous categories effectively erases the distinct identities, histories, and contributions of Afro-Colombians. Moreover, this marginalization in historical and contemporary narratives often translates into political, social, and economic marginalization as well. Recognizing and celebrating the unique heritage of African-descended communities in Colombia is crucial for developing a more inclusive and accurate understanding of the nation's history and its diverse cultural landscape. Forgotten by many, the truth demonstrates an exceptional ability to endure over time. Despite relentless efforts to obliterate it from memory and record, the essence of truth finds ways to manifest and perseveres in the most unexpected forms. The spirit of truth speaks out, undeterred by silence or suppression. It is embodied in cultural expressions, such as songs that carry messages of joy, pain, hope, and defiance. Rituals steeped in history, symbolism, and meaning keep the essence alive, reinforcing a collective memory. Particularly, the acts of resistance, both overt and subtle, serve as a testament to the unyielding power of truth. These acts defy erasure, passed down through generations as cherished fragments of resilience, never surrendering to oblivion. Initially, these elements survive quietly, shared in whispers and cautious practices, but as they find fertile ground in the hearts and minds of the new generations, they grow stronger. These whispers amplify into a powerful roar, a collective voice that asserts the truth with renewed vigor, demanding recognition and justice in a world that can no longer ignore its presence. This is not a mere documentary focused on pain and suffering. Instead, it is a poignant and compelling narrative that highlights the extraordinary resilience and brilliance of the African spirit, which managed to endure and flourish despite the harrowing experiences of enslavement. This story concentrates on the defiance against oppression, the ingenuity that blossomed in adversity, and the indomitable spirit of African peoples as they were transported against their will to new lands. Specifically, the focus is on Brazil, the largest recipient of enslaved Africans in the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade. This country, rich in natural resources and cultural diversity, became the destination for over 4.8 million Africans who were forcibly uprooted from their homes. Upon arrival, they were subjected to unimaginable hardships, yet they also brought with them a wealth of cultural practices, traditions, and knowledge. Despite the brutal conditions, they managed to shape and influence Brazil's socio-cultural landscape, contributing to its rich mix of music, religion, cuisine, and linguistic elements that continue to resonate today. The narrative also examines the socio-political impact of this forced migration, shedding light on the legacies of colonialism and slavery that have shaped contemporary Brazil and the wider Americas. It's a story of how these communities have navigated the challenges of displacement, discrimination, and cultural erasure, and yet have managed to preserve their heritage and build new identities in a foreign land. It's a celebration of their strength and enduring influence, demonstrating that even in the face of extreme adversity, the human capacity for resilience and renewal remains unshakable. The forced migration of Africans during the transatlantic slave trade was a devastating period in history, with a significant concentration of enslaved individuals, around 40%, being trafficked to the territories that now comprise Brazil. Among these African populations, a majority were funneled into key Brazilian port cities and economic hubs. Salvador, for example, became notorious as a primary entry point due to its strategic location and booming sugarcane industry. Recife and Rio de Janeiro likewise were critical nodes in this deplorable network, serving as points where enslaved Africans were sold and then transported to work in mines, on large sugar plantations, or integrated into urban economies as laborers in construction, domestic service, artisanal crafts, and other sectors. The labor of these enslaved Africans was exploited largely in the cultivation and processing of lucrative cash crops, particularly sugarcane, which propelled Brazil into a significant position in global trade. Additionally, in regions rich in minerals and precious metals, enslaved Africans were forced into grueling work in mines. In urban settings, their labor supported the development of infrastructure and the creation of goods that buttressed the colonial economy. Beyond their primary roles in agriculture, mining, and construction, enslaved Africans also contributed significantly to various other regional sectors, such as transportation, artisanal trades, and even in shaping cultural practices, leaving a lasting impact on Brazilian society. Over the course of centuries, these communities forged a complex and richly woven tapestry known as Afro-Brazilian societies. Through generations, they carefully preserved and celebrated the diverse heritages rooted in various African traditions, which encompassed a mosaic of customs and practices from Yoruba, Bantu, and Fon peoples, among others. These societies have not only contributed to the cultural diversity of Brazil, but have also influenced the nation's music, dance, religion, and cuisine. In cities like Salvador, the capital of Bahia, this influence remains palpable as the vibrant center pulsates with the rhythms of African culture, which continues to thrive and shape local identity in profound ways. The streets of Salvador showcase a living legacy where the drum beats of candomblé rituals, the capoeira martial art, and the flavors of Afro-Brazilian cuisine coalesce to tell a story of resilience and cultural richness. However, following the abolition of slavery in Brazil in 1888, a new chapter began. Formerly enslaved people and their descendants faced significant challenges in integrating into a society still marked by racial prejudices and economic disparities. Despite these obstacles, Afro-Brazilian communities have played a crucial role in shaping the nation's cultural and social landscapes, bringing their rich traditions and dynamic influences to the fore, thus continuing to mold Brazil's identity in countless inspiring and enduring ways. The concept of European immigration was leveraged as a strategic tool aimed at diluting the African and indigenous presence in the population. This ideology, known as whitening or blanqueamiento, permeated much more than just societal attitudes. It became a cornerstone of the official government policy, deeply entrenched in legislative and administrative actions. The government not only endorsed this approach but also actively promoted it through various means. This policy involved the production and dissemination of propaganda materials. These materials went beyond merely encouraging European immigration. They glorified it. European immigrants were depicted in an exceptionally favorable light, often as epitomes of progress, modernity, and civilization. They were portrayed as ideal settlers who would contribute positively to the nation's future, serving as a supposed remedy for the country's development. Concurrently, this narrative was used to marginalize and devalue the African and non-European segments of the population. Africans and those of African descent were systematically cast in a negative light within official discourses, depicting them as inferior, undesirable, and a hindrance to national progress. This dual approach reinforced social hierarchies and perpetuated racial discrimination, favoring European heritage while denigrating those of African descent. As a result, the whitening policies contributed to long-lasting racial and social divides, the effects of which can still be felt in contemporary society. Throughout the history of Brazil, a certain narrative has been cultivated, particularly during the periods of intense industrialization and nation-building that characterized the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Symbols of civilization and progress were elevated as the ultimate goals for society. These symbols often comprised Western notions of modernity, including technological advancements, urban development, and socioeconomic growth that echoed European and North American models. Educational institutions like schools played a pivotal role in disseminating this framework. They promoted curricula focused on Western achievements and ideals, often underplaying or outright neglecting the rich contributions of African heritage to the nation's fabric. Churches and religious organizations contributed by advancing the notion that moral and societal progress was synonymous with adopting Westernized Christian values. Cultural organizations and media outlets further entrenched this perspective by celebrating Western lifestyles and norms as the epitome of sophistication and success. Consequently, the ideology of progress in Brazil came to be heavily influenced by Eurocentric values, which encouraged a distancing from African heritage. This led to a complex dynamic where African cultural elements were either marginalized or appropriated within a framework that undervalued their significance, deeming them inconsistent with the envisioned path to modernization. The white colonizers, driven by fear and misunderstanding of the African culture they encountered, implemented harsh methods to suppress it. One vivid expression of this suppression can be seen in their attempt to eradicate African religions. Candomblé, for instance, is a religion that originated from African spiritual traditions brought over by enslaved people. Deeply rooted in the culture and spirituality of its followers, Candomblé emphasizes a connection with the divine, nature, and ancestral spirits. Despite its profound significance, the colonizers not only disrespected Candomblé, but took active measures to eradicate it. They enacted laws that made its practices illegal, forcing believers to worship in secrecy. Those who adhered to their religious practices often faced arrest, public humiliation, and persecution. Sacred drums, integral to Candomblé ceremonies and symbolizing a deep connection to the spiritual world, were not spared. These drums held both symbolic and ritual importance, and their destruction represented a violent attempt to erase a key aspect of cultural identity. Of freedom. Today, Brazil is home to the second largest Black population globally, surpassed only by Nigeria. Despite this significant number, Afro-Brazilians continue to experience systemic exclusion across various aspects of society. Even as we move through the year 2025, significant disparities remain apparent, particularly in the realms of media representation, political influence, and economic equality. In media, Afro-Brazilians are frequently underrepresented or stereotyped, lacking visibility in television, film, and advertising. This absence contributes to the perpetuation of prejudice and fails to reflect the country's diverse cultural reality. Similarly, political representation remains largely insufficient. Despite the country's high percentage of Black citizens, their representation in government at all levels is disproportionately low. Additionally, economic inequality remains a critical issue. Afro-Brazilians often face barriers to accessing quality education, decent employment opportunities, and fair treatment in the job market. These disparities in crucial areas continue to underscore the pervasive influence of historical and ongoing discrimination. Without concerted efforts to address these systemic inequalities, the promise of true freedom and equality remains unfulfilled for many in Brazilian society. Individuals arrived in Mexico through ports such as Veracruz, a key gateway for Spanish colonization and trade. These settlers, explorers, and laborers played a crucial role in the establishment and development of colonial cities. They significantly contributed to various economic sectors. In the mining sector, they operated silver mines, which became a backbone of the colonial economy, generating wealth and the basis for trade with Europe and Asia. In agriculture, they were instrumental in the cultivation and management of sugar plantations, introducing enrichment to the local economy and contributing to the development of a plantation-based economy. Furthermore, these individuals often performed domestic labor, working in households, and contributing to the daily functioning and sustainability of the colonial society. Over time, they formed familial ties with indigenous peoples, often through intermarriage. This not only facilitated a blending of cultures, but also led to the emergence of new communities. These new familial connections helped to fuse different traditions, languages, and practices, thus creating a distinct mestizo culture that became a foundational element of Mexico's social fabric. Afro-Indigenous communities emerged through the interaction and intermingling of African slaves who were brought to various parts of the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade, and indigenous peoples who originally inhabited these regions. This confluence led to the formation of intricate social structures and diverse cultural practices as these communities intertwined their heritages. Unlike situations in other countries like Brazil or the United States, where Afro-Indigenous groups have often been able to maintain distinct identities, these communities faced systematic reclassification over time. fundamentally altering their social and cultural identities. Initially, many of these individuals were labeled as mulatto, a term historically used to describe people of mixed African and European descent, which often neglected their indigenous roots. Over time, the classification shifted, and these communities were increasingly redefined as Indio, a term for indigenous peoples, effectively downplaying or erasing their African heritage in official records and social frameworks. This reclassification often disregarded the complexities of their mixed heritage, instead favoring simplified categories that aligned with broader national narratives or demographic policies. In many cases, this process resulted in these communities being subsumed into the broader mestizo identity. Mestizo typically refers to people of mixed European and indigenous descent. By being classified under this general category, the unique identities, histories, and cultural contributions of Afro-Indigenous peoples were often homogenized or forgotten entirely, leading to a loss of recognition and support for their specific heritage and rights. Entity. Among Mexico's revered national heroes, Vicente Guerrero stands out notably for his African descent, which adds a unique layer to his legacy. Guerrero, born in 1782, played a pivotal role as a revolutionary leader during the Mexican War of Independence. He demonstrated extraordinary resilience and strategic prowess, leading to the successful achievement of independence from Spanish rule in 1821. Guerrero's significance extends beyond his military contributions, as his presidency marked a transformative period for Mexico. Becoming the second president in 1829, he made a profoundly impactful decision by officially abolishing slavery. This act not only aligned with the principles of the independence movement, which advocated for liberty and equality, but also laid the groundwork for the nation's commitment to human rights. Despite these achievements, Guerrero's contributions and heritage have often been underemphasized in historical narratives. Many accounts traditionally focused on figures of European descent, leading to limited acknowledgement of his crucial role and the diverse heritage that influenced Mexico's history. Today, efforts are being made to present a more comprehensive view, recognizing Guerrero's legacy as integral to the nation's identity and cultural heritage. Guerrero, a historical figure of mixed heritage, often appears in representations where his skin tone is noticeably lighter and his African roots are understated or ignored. This tendency to whiten his image isn't limited to Guerrero alone, but is part of a larger pattern across Mexican culture. This pattern reflects a broader, entrenched national trend where Black identity and contributions are systematically downplayed or eliminated from mainstream narratives. As a result, the rich and diverse history of Afro-Mexicans is often invisibilized, leading to a collective consciousness that insufficiently acknowledges and celebrates this significant part of its heritage. This erasure contributes to the marginalization of Afro-Mexican identity, depriving it of the recognition it deserves in Mexico's cultural and historical narratives. Communities in the Costa Chica region, particularly those situated in the southern Mexican states of Oaxaca and Guerrero, are home to diverse populations, including indigenous and Afro-Mexican communities. These areas hold rich cultural histories and traditions, but have faced long-standing challenges of marginalization and neglect. From a governmental perspective, these communities have often been excluded from national censuses, a critical oversight that has profound implications. Without proper enumeration, these communities are effectively rendered invisible in official statistics, leading to a lack of political representation and a deficiency in resource allocation. Without recognition in the census, federal governments may not adequately fund these areas or consider them in development planning. Furthermore, the lack of federal recognition means that these communities do not receive equitable access to essential public services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. This results in significant disadvantages, such as inadequate medical facilities and personnel, poorly equipped educational institutions, and a lack of essential infrastructure like roads, clean water, and electricity. The failure to provide these services perpetuates cycles of poverty and limits opportunities for economic development and social mobility. As a result of this systemic neglect, residents in the Costa Chica region face barriers to accessing opportunities that are available in more affluent or centrally located areas. The lack of support in areas such as healthcare not only puts lives at risk, but also exacerbates existing social and economic disparities. For these communities to thrive, it's essential that they be accurately counted, adequately represented, and provided with the resources necessary for development and well-being. Advocates for Afro-Mexican communities have diligently strived to create a rich legacy that encompasses culture, history, and education spanning numerous generations. This vibrant legacy continues to grow and evolve as more individuals contribute to its narrative. A pivotal moment in Afro-Mexican history occurred in 2015 when, for the first time, they were officially recognized and included in Mexico's national censuses. This inclusion was a significant milestone, symbolizing formal acknowledgement by the government and broader society of the existence and importance of Afro-Mexicans. This recognition did not come without struggle. It was the result of prolonged and relentless advocacy, campaigning, and activism by members of the Afro-Mexican community and their allies who tirelessly worked to bring national attention to their cause. In the present day, Afro-Mexican artists, educators, and community leaders are at the forefront of a dynamic movement to enhance public awareness of their rich heritage. They actively celebrate their unique cultural identity and work diligently to promote understanding and appreciation of their history. Furthermore, they are spearheading efforts to improve the educational landscape, ensuring that future generations have access to opportunities that were previously denied or limited. These leaders are not only preserving their heritage, but also striving to create a more inclusive and equitable society for all. Through their ongoing initiatives, they are adding new chapters to the Afro-Mexican story and fostering a greater understanding of their contributions to the nation's fabric. Individuals and activist groups are fervently reclaiming their essential role in the national narrative and historical context. This movement involves a concerted effort to educate the younger generations about the rich lives and enduring legacies of their forebears who have significantly contributed to the fabric of the society. This educational mission is crucial for fostering a sense of identity and continuity, ensuring that the stories of past struggles and triumphs are passed down. Furthermore, they are revitalizing and celebrating vibrant African-rooted musical traditions, such as the energetic and soulful Jaranak. These cultural expressions are not only a form of artistic engagement, but also act as a means of embracing, preserving, and proudly promoting their cultural heritage. By doing so, they ensure these traditions remain a vital part of the community's identity and collective memory. In parallel, these individuals and groups are also vocally championing equal rights and social justice. They are tirelessly advocating for systemic changes to build a society that is truly fair and inclusive. By demanding recognition and equality, they aim to dismantle barriers that have historically marginalized certain groups, thus fostering a more equitable future for all citizens. For many years, a simplistic view has prevailed, suggesting that Mexico's identity is predominantly, if not exclusively, a mix of Spanish and indigenous peoples. This narrative, however, is gradually unraveling as deeper layers of Mexico's complex heritage come to light. Notably, the recognition of African roots and contributions is becoming more prominent, showing that Mexico's racial and cultural history is far more diverse than previously acknowledged. The African presence in Mexico dates back to the colonial era, when Africans were brought over as slaves. Despite this significant part of history, their descendants' contributions have been largely overlooked in the mainstream narrative. This oversight wasn't accidental. It was a product of deliberate and systematic erasure, a process by which the presence and impact of African descendants were minimized or ignored. Mexico's case is not isolated. Countries like Brazil have also seen a similar obscuring of their African heritage. Moreover, this phenomenon spans the entire Latin American continent, where the role of African descendants in shaping national identities has often been underappreciated or overlooked. Yet scholars and activists are working to rectify these omissions, bringing to light the diverse strands of heritage that contribute to the rich tapestry of Latin American culture today. This recognition is crucial not only for honoring the past, but also for understanding and embracing the full spectrum of cultural influences that shape present-day societies. In Colombia, Afro-Colombians make up an essential segment of the population, representing over 10% of the country's people. Despite this substantial presence, Afro-Colombians are often marginalized and underrepresented in key areas of society. In media, their stories and contributions are frequently overlooked, limiting the visibility of their culture and experiences in the national narrative. In the education sector, there is a lack of representation both in the curriculum, which often excludes the histories and achievements of Afro-Colombians, and among educators and academic leaders. Politically, their underrepresentation means that their voices and interests are not adequately reflected in decision-making processes, which can lead to the neglect of their community's needs and perpetuate socioeconomic disparities. Similarly, in Argentina, the situation is equally complex. The narrative that people of African descent were once officially declared extinct in Argentina has had a profound impact on the visibility and acknowledgement of their community. This notion has contributed to their erasure from mainstream cultural and social narratives, resulting in a lack of representation and acknowledgement in various facets of Argentine society. This invisibility can affect the inclusion of Afro-Argentinians in national discussions, policymaking, and cultural recognition, perpetuating a cycle of exclusion and diminishing their contributions to the country's rich cultural tapestry. By the late 19th century, a widespread misconception had taken hold in many societies, particularly in Central and South America. It erroneously suggested that Black people had either vanished or were inconsequential to the national identity and development of their nations. This misconception became entrenched and was improperly used as a false justification for excluding Black individuals from the perceived national identity. This was despite clear evidence to the contrary, as thousands of Afro-Argentine families, among many others across the continent, continued to live, work, and flourish, contributing in manifold ways to the society's fabric. Across the entirety of Central and South America, thriving Black communities held fast to their cultural heritage and history. They showcased resilience amidst systemic discrimination and marginalization, maintaining their traditions, languages, and customs. These communities actively preserved their stories and contributions, forming an integral part of the collective history. Despite facing efforts aimed at diminishing their impact, Black individuals and communities have played, and continue to play, pivotal roles in the rich tapestry of these nations. Their contributions to the society's economic, cultural, and political landscapes remain significant and cannot be overlooked, continuing to shape national identities in diverse and meaningful ways. Knes, a community with a rich and unique cultural identity, has long been subjected to efforts aimed at eroding its presence and influence. This suppression has manifested through both cultural and governmental channels, where sustained efforts have sought to diminish Knes's visibility and significance. One of the key strategies employed to undermine Knes was racial reclassification. This method went beyond just recognizing African descent. During the colonial era and under subsequent Republican governments, authorities systematically employed reclassification as a tool to redefine and obscure Knes's cultural and racial heritage. This process often involved compelling or coercing individuals aligned with the majority culture, thus distorting or erasing the distinct Knes identity. These policies of reclassification served to blur the lines of Knes's heritage, effectively minimizing its influence and delegitimizing its cultural and historical significance. By redefining what it meant to belong to the Knes group, these authorities sought to dilute the group's uniqueness, and in doing so, undermine its collective ability to assert and protect its identity and rights. Governments during the colonial and post-colonial eras, particularly in Latin America, developed a sophisticated system of racial classifications. These classifications, including terms like mestizo, a mix of European and indigenous heritage, Zambo, African and indigenous ancestry, Pardo, a broad term often used for mixed-race individuals, especially of European and African descent, and Moreno, often used to refer to darker-skinned individuals, sometimes focusing on skin tone rather than clear ethnic lineage, were not neutral descriptors. They were meticulously designed with a deliberate intention to dilute and obscure a clear African identity. This strategy had profound implications beyond the mere erasure of cultural heritage. By not allowing African-descended communities to identify clearly and collectively, these policies restricted their access to land ownership and use. Land rights were often tied to recognized identities, and by fragmenting these identities, governments could justify denying land claims or redistributing land to other groups. Moreover, this practice of dividing people into numerous and often ambiguous categories hindered the ability of African-descended populations to build solidarity. It created a multitude of divisions, making it challenging for these communities to come together under a unified identity to advocate for their rights. This dilution and fragmentation of identity weakened political power and representation, making it easier for ruling authorities to ignore or suppress the demands of these marginalized groups. The systemic effort to render Blackness invisible in official documents and records served as a means of systematic discrimination. By ignoring or omitting any mention of racial identity, authorities could easily marginalize Afro-descendants, essentially stripping them of their identity in the eyes of the law. This deliberate omission simplified the process for excluding this group from various societal opportunities, from securing jobs to obtaining quality education and healthcare, and even participating in the democratic process. Afro-descendants found themselves systematically blocked from the rights and privileges granted to others. Yet, it's crucial to recognize that this enforced invisibility did not mean that Afro-descendants disappeared from societal fabric. Instead, they continued to play a vital role in society, contributing to cultural, economic, and social landscapes despite facing neglect and marginalization. It's critical to understanding the enduring traditions of the Garifuna people is recognizing their long-standing history, which dates back many centuries. These rich cultural traditions have been preserved and passed down through generations and are especially vibrant among the Garifuna communities along the Caribbean coastlines of Central America. The Garifuna are descendants of African, Island Carib, and Arawak people, and they have built a unique and vibrant culture that celebrates this blend of African and indigenous influences. In contemporary times, the Garifuna people are finding new avenues to honor and celebrate their cultural heritage. With the advent and widespread use of digital media platforms, a new generation of Garifuna individuals is leveraging these tools to give voice to their communities, sharing their stories, music, dance, language, and traditions with a global audience. These platforms are fostering a resurgence in cultural expression, allowing the Garifuna youth to blend traditional elements with contemporary forms, thus ensuring the preservation and dynamism of their heritage. The younger generation is not only celebrating their roots, but also ensuring that their traditions adapt and thrive in the modern world. Thank you so much for continuing to support the show. African spiritual practices were seen as threats to colonial power because they embodied a form of cultural and spiritual resistance. These practices were deeply ingrained in the identities of the people, offering them a sense of community, history, and connection to their ancestors. The colonial powers perceived these spiritual systems as a threat because they provided a foundation for unity and resistance against colonial rule. In territories like Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and beyond, colonial authorities implemented harsh measures to suppress African religions. They criminalized these practices, branding them as witchcraft or paganism, and often punished practitioners through imprisonment, torture, or even execution. This was part of a broader strategy to impose Christianity, which was seen as a tool for civilizing and controlling the population. Missionaries and colonial officials worked to convert indigenous and African populations, viewing conversion as a means to dismantle these traditional belief systems. This imposition of Christianity did not merely seek to change religious practices, but was part of a larger effort to control the social and cultural life of the colonized people. By undermining indigenous and African spiritual systems, colonizers aimed to break down social structures and weaken any potential for resistance. The legacy of this religious imposition and cultural erasure can still be seen today in the ongoing struggles to preserve and revive African and indigenous spirituality. This process of cultural erasure was not incidental, but rather a calculated effort to assert control over the people of Oritia. European colonizers systematically supplanted Oritian belief systems with their own traditions and religious doctrines, presenting them as superior and enlightened. The indigenous spiritual practices, which had been integral to Oritian society and identity, were dismissed as barbaric or irrational. This denigration wasn't limited to religious beliefs. When it came to understanding phenomena like spirit possession, which had previously been viewed as a natural and respected part of their spiritual framework, colonial authorities and missionaries redefined these practices through a lens that framed them as signs of mental instability or evil, rather than spiritual experiences. This not only delegitimized the traditional healers and spiritual leaders, but also disenfranchised individuals who experienced those phenomena, stripping away their societal roles and identities. Moreover, this strategic cultural replacement also targeted the pantheon of African deities. These gods, who had long been anchors of cultural narratives and identity, were depicted as malevolent and superstitious, effectively undermining the spiritual and moral framework of the Oratian people. This transformation aimed at erasing the wealth of generational knowledge and spiritual wisdom, replacing it with a new order that served the interests and power structures of the colonizers. Through this, the colonizers sought not only to dominate the physical territory of Oratia, but to mold its cultural and spiritual landscape in their image, ensuring a domination that would persist across generations. Amidst the hardships and dehumanization of slavery, where individuals were stripped of their freedom, families, and cultural roots, the human spirit found ways to resist and adapt. This defiance was evident in the ways enslaved Africans preserved the essence of their cultural and spiritual identity. Despite being forcibly relocated and oppressed, they ingeniously found methods to ensure their gods and spiritual beliefs continued to thrive. They disguised their traditional deities and rituals, seamlessly blending them with the iconography and imagery of Catholic saints. This ingenious cultural adaptation led to the creation of unique syncretic religions, distinctive blends of African and Christian practices. In Brazil, the faithful developed Candomblé, a faith that honors both African spirits and Catholic saints. In Cuba, Santeria emerges, intertwining Yoruba beliefs with Christianity. In Haiti, Vodou takes shape, merging traditional African religions with elements of Catholicism. These religions were far more than a fusion of rituals. They represented a powerful form of resistance and a means of preserving identity. They were symbols of hope and solidarity, serving as a reminder of the spiritual freedom that could not be taken away. By integrating African and Christian elements, these belief systems helped sustain the spirit of the enslaved, providing them with a sense of community, continuity, and empowerment in the face of oppression. Through these practices, the enslaved not only managed to keep alive their ancestral traditions, but also forged new paths of resilience and spiritual freedom. They were not corruptions in any sense. Rather, they stood as powerful acts of spiritual resistance. These were expressions of identity and heritage, defiantly preserved and passed down through generations. Even when language was forcibly silenced and communication restricted, the drum's voice persisted. Its rhythms spoke a universal language that could not be contained, echoing messages of freedom, unity, and resilience. Rituals were held away from the scrutinizing gaze of oppressors, hidden deep within the quiet embrace of forests, where the rustling leaves and whispering winds offered sanctuary. These acts of worship and remembrance also took place along the banks of rivers, where the flow of water symbolized life's continuity and the enduring spirit of the people. Inside secret shrines, hidden from those who sought to suppress them, communities found ways to keep their traditions alive. In these consecrated moments, ancestors were not forgotten, but lovingly remembered and honored. These acts of remembrance served as a powerful link to the past, allowing people to draw strength from the stories and wisdom of those who came before. The rituals and the drumming became a form of silent, yet thunderous rebellion, a means to assert their humanity and to declare through each beat that their spirit could not be broken. Despite the passage of time and the many challenges of colonization and migration, African spirituality has remained a vibrant and resilient force, deeply rooted in the continent's diverse cultures and traditions. When names and stories faded from memory, the essence of these traditions persisted through other means, such as the rich symbolism found in art, the storytelling woven into dances, the powerful rhythms of music, and the vivid imagery of dreams. These forms of expression carried the spiritual essence and teachings forward, ensuring their survival across generations. Today, there is a renewed and growing interest in African spiritual traditions, signaling a powerful movement of cultural reclaiming and identity building. People of African descent around the world, particularly in the diaspora, are actively seeking to understand, practice, and honor these ancient practices. In doing so, they are reconnecting with their roots, celebrating the wisdom of their ancestors, and fostering a deeper sense of pride and belonging. This resurgence is not only a way of preserving heritage, but also serves as a source of empowerment and connection, bridging the past with the present and future. Many people are now reconnecting with the rich and ancient spiritual traditions of Yoruba, Congo, and Dahomey. These practices encompass a variety of rituals, ceremonies, and beliefs that honor the connection between humans, nature, and the divine, often involving a deep reverence for ancestors and a profound understanding of cosmology. For a long period, these rituals were kept hidden and practiced in secrecy due to various forms of suppression, often violently enforced through colonialism and slavery. These attempts aim to disrupt cultural continuity by erasing these traditions, thereby attempting to sever individuals from their ancestral roots and identity. However, despite these efforts, the core and essence of these spiritual practices survived. Communities have shown resilience and determination in preserving their spiritual heritage. Today, there's a renaissance of these traditions, visibly celebrated and embraced. These practices are now being documented on film, shared openly within communities, and taught to new generations. This revitalization is not only about maintaining a cultural foothold, but also about reclaiming identities that were threatened by systemic erasure. As these traditions continue to flourish, they serve as a testament to the enduring strength and adaptability of cultural identities across generations. The ancestors, once thought to be silent and gone, have astonishingly returned, infusing the present with their potent voices. These voices echo robustly through the halls of sacred temples, a place where time seems to stand still, honoring the past. Within homes, these ancestral whispers have become powerful declarations, resonating in the intimate, private spaces where families gather, sharing stories and wisdom passed down through generations. Even deeper in the hearts of those living far from their homeland, the diaspora, these voices embed themselves with a newfound clarity and strength, igniting a reconnection with their roots and heritage. The resurgence of these voices symbolically challenges the attempts to obliterate an entire people. To truly erase a culture, the oppressors knew it wasn't enough to eliminate individuals or erase their names from history. It required dismantling the very foundation of their spiritual and cultural existence. This means silencing their gods and deities, the divine figures that provided guidance and meaning. It means severing the profound spiritual connections, the rituals, and the cultural traditions that weave identity and history together. The revival of these voices stands as a testament to the resilience of a people and a powerful reminder that erasing a name does not erase a legacy. Heroes, their history, their struggles, and their triumphs have interwoven themselves into the tapestry of societies across the Americas. The presence of Africa in the Americas is a testament to a history that cannot be erased, despite centuries of attempts to do so. This presence is deeply rooted and has permeated every aspect of life, culture, and identity, sewn into the fabric of the Americas. It is inextricably linked to the bloodlines that course through the veins of countless individuals, carrying with them the heritages, traditions, and stories of their ancestors. These bloodlines are an unbreakable chain that links the past with the present, and they speak to the resilience and endurance of those who came before. The African influence also exists in the literal ground we walk on. The soil throughout the Americas has been enriched by the labor, sweat, and blood of countless African-descended people who contributed to the growth, economy, and very formation of nations, nurturing the roots of their descendants and preserving the echoes of their contributions. Most profoundly, the spirit and resilience of people of African descent manifest in powerful ways, from cultural expressions like music, dance, and art to the everyday acts of perseverance and community building. From the rugged hills of Brazil, where quilombos once provided refuge and fostered resistance, to the sun-kissed coastlines of Mexico, where vibrant traditions have been preserved through generations, and beyond, the legacy of Africa in the Americas is a rich and indelible part of the continent's character. It stands as a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the unbreakable ties that bind the past to the present. From the dense and lush rainforests that span the vast biodiverse landscapes of Colombia, teeming with wildlife and indigenous plant species, to the lively, vibrant cities along the shimmering Caribbean coast, where the azure sea meets the golden sands, Colombia's varied geography echoes with the rich history of its people. Here, a powerful rhythm of African heritage continues to resonate deeply, a testament to the enduring influence of the descendants of those who were brought to these shores centuries ago. This African pulse is not just a memory, but a living influence embedded in the art, music, and daily life, echoing through generations and shaping the cultural soul of the nation. Far from altering or rewriting history, our mission is to breathe life back into the rich tapestry of stories that form the nation's heritage. We aim to honor and celebrate the voices of those who, despite facing oppression and attempts at erasure, stood resilient and made their marks on history, leaving an indelible impact on culture and society. By reclaiming these narratives, we ensure they are remembered and celebrated, bringing the past into the present to enrich and inform the future. Be broken. This phrase speaks to the disruption of a narrative, the shattering of a facade that has long concealed the truth. In quiet, careful efforts, the faces of those who had both figuratively and literally been painted over are gently restored. These acts of restoration aren't merely artistic. They symbolize the re-emergence of individuals whose identities, stories, and contributions had been obscured or obliterated from public records and memory. Names, more than mere labels, carry with them the essence of identity, yet many were lost, purposefully erased from documents and histories as if they never existed. Yet in memories and in untold stories, their presence has remained undeniable, preserved even against the sweeping tide of concerted forgetfulness. This erasure goes beyond superficial neglect. It is a profound act that has sought to rewrite the very foundation of recorded history, leaving gaps and voids where lives once left their imprint. But despite these deliberate omissions, the truth finds its way to the surface, refusing to remain buried. It uncovers the stories that demand to be told and restores the humanity of those who were unjustly silenced. This moment, then, is not an ending, but a beginning, a prelude to a broader movement. It signifies the commencement of a journey towards recognition, acknowledgement, and ultimately justice, where the stories of the forgotten are finally told and the depth of truth is embraced in its entirety. The beginning of the breaking, therefore, becomes a powerful act of reclamation. The beginning of remembrance has arrived, heralding a historic moment marked by the powerful reclaiming of pride that was long lost or intentionally suppressed by forces intent on erasing or marginalizing voices. This awakening is a profound and spirited renewal of identity and cultural heritage, marking a transformative period where the echoes of the past are honored and revitalized. It signifies the inspiring return of the ancestors whose voices, wisdom, and experiences resound through the corridors of time, imparting lessons hard-earned and too long ignored. The truth, after years of being shrouded in shadows and obscured by misinformation, prejudice, and oppression, has finally emerged into the light. Now, this truth is clear and undeniable, no longer obscured by the veil of neglect or distortion. It stands firm, a beacon of resilience that cannot be silenced or hidden away ever again. In this journey towards truth and recognition, we extend our deepest gratitude to those who have chosen to spend their valuable time in learning and growing alongside us, engaging with history, embracing diverse narratives, and contributing to an ongoing dialogue that strengthens our collective understanding. If through this journey you discovered new perspectives, unearthed forgotten histories, or found a meaningful connection to your own heritage, know that you are part of a broader movement towards a future where all stories are valued and every voice is heard. This is not just a moment of reflection, but a forge for crafting a more inclusive and empathetic world built on the strong foundation of our shared humanity. If you found pleasure in discovering something new today, we kindly ask that you take a brief moment to express your appreciation. Please like this video by clicking the thumbs up icon. Share it with your friends and family to spread the joy, and subscribe to our channel for more enriching content. By subscribing, you'll become part of a community that celebrates learning and growth. Furthermore, don't forget to activate the notification bell. This ensures that you're instantly updated whenever we release new and compelling stories, allowing you to stay connected with our latest content. Your engagement and support mean the world to us. We are deeply thankful to have you as part of our community. Thank you for being with us on this journey.